The year was 1519. In the heart of Mesoamerica stood a city like no other, Tenochtitlan. Rising from the waters of Lake Texcoco, its causeways stretched like arms across the lake. Its canals glistened like mirrors in the sun. Its temples, pyramids of stone, and painted in dazzling colors, towered high, crowned with altars that smoked with incense and with blood. This was the heart of the Aztec Empire, a dominion of millions. Its power reached far beyond the Valley of Mexico, binding city after city in chains of tribute and fear. But its wealth, its glory, its very survival was built upon death. Every year, tens of thousands of men, women, and children were sacrificed. Hearts were ripped beating from chests to feed the sun. Victims were flayed alive and their skins worn by priests in demonic rituals. Children were drowned to summon rain. The Aztec gods were gods of death, and their empire was an empire of blood. Yet even as it stood at its height, signs of doom appeared. A comet blazing across the heavens, a temple consumed by fire, a lake that boiled with strange lights, statues that bled. The Aztecs trembled, for they believed their gods had turned against them. And across the sea, destiny was on the move. From Spain came ships, sails filled with wind, carrying men of iron and faith, men who sought treasure, glory, and souls. At their head was one man, Hernán Cortés. Cortés landed on the Yucatan coast in 1519 with barely 600 men, a handful of horses, a few cannon, and steel blades. Against an empire of millions, it was nothing. Yet Cortés carried with him something greater: the cross, gunpowder, and ambition without end. The peoples of the coast, the Totonacs, bent the knee, eager for any ally against their Aztec overlords. From them, Cortés learned of the empire's cruelty and its endless hunger for sacrifice. But not all greeted him with peace. In the highlands, the Tlaxcalans resisted fiercely, clashing with Spanish steel in bloody battle. Yet when they saw Spanish armor defy obsidian blades and cannon shatter their lines, they chose alliance. For generations they had suffered beneath the Aztec yoke. Now, with Cortés, they saw a chance for deliverance. Through cunning, fire, and the sword, Cortés built an army. Spaniards and Tlaxcalans, united by necessity, marched toward the Valley of Mexico. And then they saw it. Rising from the lake like a vision, gleaming in the sunlight, was Tenochtitlan, a city larger than any in Spain, its markets filled with tens of thousands, its temples coated with gold. To the Spaniards, it was like stepping into another world, a world beautiful and terrifying. Emperor Moctezuma II ruled this empire of dread, yet he was haunted by the omens, haunted by whispers that these strangers were not men, but gods. Perhaps even Quetzalcoatl returned. His priests warned of destruction. His nobles urged war. But Moctezuma hesitated. Paralyzed by superstition, he chose submission cloaked as diplomacy. In November 1519, he welcomed Cortés into his capital. The Spaniards gazed in awe at the palaces, the marketplaces, the gardens floating upon the waters. They saw wonders, and they saw horror. For Cortés and his men were led up the steps of the Templo Mayor, where they beheld altars caked with blood, skull racks bearing the heads of thousands, and priests whose very flesh was painted black with gore. If Cortés had harbored any illusions, they ended there. This was a kingdom consecrated to demons, and it had to fall. Moctezuma showered the Spaniards with gifts of gold and silver, hoping to appease them. But gold only inflamed their desire. Cortés acted. With boldness that stunned even his own men, he seized Moctezuma in his own palace, holding the emperor hostage within his capital. The empire of millions stood paralyzed, its god-king a prisoner of barely 600 men. For months, the Spaniards defiled temples, tore down idols, and melted Aztec gold. The people simmered with rage. Priests proclaimed their gods betrayed, and whispers spread through the city that Moctezuma had surrendered his divine authority. Tenochtitlan was a cauldron, ready to explode. At last, the storm broke. A festival turned massacre. Spanish steel clashed with Aztec fury. Moctezuma, forced before his people, was struck down. By Spaniards or his own enraged subjects, the truth remains unknown. But with his death, all restraint vanished. On June 30th, 1520, Cortés attempted to escape the city under cover of darkness. Rain poured. Gold weighed heavy upon Spanish shoulders, but the Aztecs were waiting. From the lake came canoes filled with warriors. From the rooftops rained down stones and spears. The causeways became rivers of blood. Men drowned, dragged beneath the waters by the weight of stolen treasure. Screams echoed into the night. Hundreds of Spaniards perished. Thousands of Tlaxcalans fell. Cortés himself barely survived, fleeing into the night with the shattered remnants of his army. It was La Noche Triste, the night of sorrows. But sorrow did not mean defeat. Cortés retreated to Tlaxcala, but he was not broken. There, he rebuilt. He forged alliances anew, raised brigantines to command the lake, and prepared to return. By his side stood thousands of native allies, eager to see Aztec tyranny destroyed forever. But a silent weapon had already begun the work. Smallpox, carried by the Spaniards, swept through Tenochtitlan. Tens of thousands died. Nobles, priests, warriors, all fell to the plague. Even Cuitlahuac, Moctezuma's successor, perished. The empire reeled, leaderless and weakened. In May 1521, Cortés returned with vengeance. His brigantines cut off the city by water. His cannon shattered walls. His Tlaxcalan allies swarmed the causeways. For 3 months, the siege dragged on. The Aztecs fought with desperate courage, but starvation gnawed at them. Flesh was stripped from bones. Families perished in the streets. The canals ran with blood and corpses. Spanish steel carved through obsidian blades. Churches were razed even as temples burned. One by one, the Great Pyramids were toppled. At last, on August 13th, 1521, the young Emperor Cuauhtemoc was captured trying to flee the city. He stood defiant, demanding death rather than humiliation. But Cortés spared him, only to torture him later, demanding gold. With his capture, the empire was finished. The city of Tenochtitlan, once the jewel of the Americas, lay in ashes. Upon its ruins, the Spaniards built a new city, Mexico City, a city of stone, of churches, of crosses, raised where once stood altars of blood. The Aztec gods were silenced. The drums of sacrifice no longer echoed over the lake. Instead came the sound of church bells, calling the faithful to prayer. The conquest of Mexico was bloody, brutal, and driven by both greed and faith. But it was also the end of a demonic empire built upon the blood of innocents. Hernán Cortés had come for gold, and he found it. But in the shadow of the cross, he had also brought a new order. Christianity had come to the New World, and the empire of blood was no more.